podcast by two guys who know nothing about podcasting.
We know nothing about podcasting.
I'll start that again. Why not? Welcome to Bitstorm, a comedy game design podcast by two guys who know nothing about comedy nor game design, although a little bit about game design now. I'm your host, Trevor. There's Ben.
Hi.
Whatever.
We do know a little bit about game design, and I think tonight is actually going to be a little bit of a game design heavy kind of discussion, actually. I think we'll still
unlike last week where I was in the mood to just totally derail the fucking episode.
Yes, I forgot about that. I think we'll do a little bit of click pitch with a certain theme, but we want to talk about deduction games that have sort of become a bit of a trend, a bit of a bandwagon of late, but there's been some really, really good ones doing interesting things with
and there's
deductive
not just
reasoning.
One or two developers doing it. It's like so many developers out there trying all these different things.
Yeah.
You've got Lucas Pope with Return of the Obra Dinn. You've got sorry, I've forgotten his name, that did Her Story and Immortality. You've got the
Rose of the Golden Idols folks.
Yep. You've got Roottrees are Dead. And one that Ben sent to me yesterday called Type Help.
It's by William Rouse or Roos. I'm not sure which one, but
on itch, free game. And I fucking love this game. Like it was one of those things of showing that small little deductions that you make and little connections that you make just open your mind to so many possibilities.
Well, and it's just such an interesting storytelling device then, because in the end, that is what is happening here, right? Like,
yes. I mean, we've talked already for about an hour before the podcast.
Yeah,
and we had very different.
Trevor stayed up late playing it last night. I spent a bunch of time playing through it today, wanting to get it, played through before this podcast, so we could talk. But also because yes, I was also hooked on it and wanted to see what the mystery was and find all the files. And
but it turns out that we had a very different experience, yet both enjoyed it for different.
Because we discovered the exact same story, but we went through relatively different paths to find that because we just followed different clues at different times to uncover
I had
everything.
Different experiences of what's going on here and thinking that it's going down one path, and then figured out some parts early on that I didn't figure out, but still eventually came to the same end, and it's like, oh wow, that was just a great experience. And the fact that because we're following different threads and we both find it at different times, like, it gives you the same satisfaction of like, this is your story that you experienced this way, and it will never be any different, but it's still the same story that you experienced, but you experienced it in your own way.
Yeah. So I think it's worth talking a little bit about what sort of defines these games. And I mentioned this off air to you earlier, but I think a big part of it is the fact that in all of these games, the only barrier to completion to completing it is really your own knowledge of the story or of the characters or whatever you're looking at.
Not only that, but also the techniques that you have at your service to unlock the next part. So,
yeah, but like they stay consistent, right? Basically, so if you go back to say Return of the Obra Dinn, from what I recall, if you remember everyone on the manifest, you could just unlock them one at a time
in order,
and go through and finish the game. Obviously, that's not the fun bit, but it's the way that the game unrolls and unravels that information and reveals it to you as the player until it's in your head. It's stuck in your head, and the only way forward is for you to know it and to make connections, to make those deductions. And so, Type Help that we're talking about was very much like that as well. You're literally unlocking files by typing their file name which has a particular file structure, into a box to see the next file.
And I love the name is the first thing that you have to do. You have to type in help to start.
Actually, that was really cool. It was the game is called Type Help, and it pretty much just gives you a text box at the beginning.
Yeah.
And no
so
other
you type in help and it opens from there. And that was one of the most satisfying things. And I'm like, what do I do? There's just, the game's called Type Help. Okay. So we're just going to type help and see what happens. I went into the game with the idea of putting 5-10 minutes into it because there was no sound. And I'm like, I would have liked some music, like Roottrees are dead. But no, I was like, from that first moment to when I finished the game, I didn't want to stop. Did not want to stop. Ben actually sent me a message earlier today. It's like, okay, so, how'd you do your note taking? I'm like, I really didn't. Like, I had the thought of doing the notes, in the game, but you get so engrossed in the game that you just use the tools at your disposal and experience the story that way.
So I was preconditioned because I think the Blue Sky post that I saw mentioned, this is one of those games where you need to like get your spreadsheet out or whatever. And so going into it, I was ready to be like, okay, I'm going to have to take notes. And it starts telling, essentially you start having to figure out that a particular number, like each person has a number and you're going to have to figure out who they are. So I started putting that into a spreadsheet and started putting the scene names into a spreadsheet of what happened in each scene because I was like, I'm going to have to refer back to these. But actually the game is very good at quite quickly giving you ways to supplement your own information by saying like, actually I want to put this text, it can be anything, next to the, whenever someone who is numbered 2 talks. And of course, you as it's revealed, I found out the last name, so I'm going to put that there. It's Mrs. Whatever. And then, wait, okay, there's the full name. So now I know what, you can update it and change it. So that's, I really like the tools that it gave you for that actually. But I was going to talk about, because I think what we might try to do tonight is just come up with what are some different ways that information can be presented like this and revealed. Because there are a few different ways of doing that. One other that I did want to talk about that we recently played was, what was it called? No Case Will Go Unsolved.
No Case Should Remain Unsolved.
No Case Should Remain Unsolved. Which was another almost purely text-based one. But what was that one was more about figuring out who had said a particular piece of text and then in what order, essentially, like putting together a timeline. And so, again, just revealing that information in a different way, and you see someone saying, here's a few paragraphs or a bit of dialogue going back and forth. And at the very beginning, it could go to anyone. And literally in that game, it's like there's the part where someone turns themselves in and says, I did it.
And that's at the very start of the game.
It's one of the first things revealed to you, but because you don't know who has said it and you can switch it between all the different columns of who's said different things, you sort of, it gives you this really nice pathway then to figuring that all out. And again, you get those really nice deductive moments as you link things together, and it gives you that feedback. It's like, you put this in the right spot. But in a way that you can't.
Here's a nice sound, really. And here's a nice animation of it linking together, and now it's permanently linked, and it's like, there's that dopamine release. Thank you very much, game.
So I think the other thing then, which Type Help didn't have, but is similar between Obra Dinn and Roottrees and No Case, is the sort of the idea of locking things in.
Yeah.
And the way that works.
There was no locking in Type Help, and I've only just realized that now. It's like, it felt like they were locking in things when your brain.
Yeah. Locked in a name or whatever.
Is this, and they were here at this time, and that gets locked in. But the game doesn't give you that feedback, right? You could name them all completely different things and have a translation in your head between them if you wanted. The only thing is that
each file tells you how many other still hidden files
that it
references in some way, or that you may get that it has a clue towards. So there is at least that progression. You can see like, oh, I've still got a bunch left, or this is a particular file to look at to maybe find where
this
someone else
scene
was.
has like 6, like the first one that actually says, oh, you may notice that against this scene there is like a rather large number. And when you read that for the first one, it's like, really? And then you go back and you look at the list and it's like, oh shit, there's like 6 things that I can glean from this.
So yeah, I think
anyway,
let's do some click pitch.
So that was us talking for like 11 minutes on
but that's
what we're going to do for the night. But you know what? We might go a little bit long tonight.
Yeah, we'll see how we're going. I mean, maybe we won't come up with anything, and there's no new ideas under the sun. But I'm sure that we can think of something.
Yeah, I don't know if there are any new ideas.
Okay. Well, 3, 2, 1, click.
Yep, 3, 2, 1, click.
Psychotic.
Simplicity.
Okay. I mean, those are both interesting words for this sort of game.
Yeah. Okay, so I like the idea of in a deductive game, it's sort of like there is a psychotic killer.
Okay.
And you are sort of a detective tracing down.
Do you like the idea then of taking some of the identifying type mechanics then from similar to sort of Obra Dinn and Roottrees, but it's not here are 50 people you have to identify. It's maybe then got those aspects of no case remain unsolved, where you've got a bunch of suspects and it's that you're going to be able to eventually narrow it down as you reveal the story.
Who did these 100 crimes and who can you attribute to which, because, something's actually happened. So it's simplistic in that point of view that you're effectively you're getting a very
okay. So I was just thinking it was like, okay, there's, presumably like a number of crimes, and you're trying to find one killer.
I was thinking you've got a fuck ton of crimes, and you're trying to go. There are red herrings, there are actual people, and then there are some that are not associated with this main serial killer. But if you can work them out, there are additional things that you can sort of. So yeah,
I like the idea of putting together a timeline of crimes. Then in some way, I like the idea of
this person couldn't have done this because he was in jail between this time and this time.
Yeah. And then you can potentially have some revelations of, you've got information that this person was sentenced to 3 years at this point.
But they were let out on good behaviour.
Yeah, or something like, or they escaped, or due to
prison overcrowding, and therefore they were.
Yeah, but you don't get that information till later. So you might have written them off as like, there's no way, because they've essentially got a literally ironclad alibi. But yeah, that you get that information later. I do like the idea then, going along the lines of the locking in sort of thing, that, okay, it could be a similar thing of, for each crime you're having to put in, I don't know whether you're putting in full like motive, means, and opportunity, but potentially who did it, where it occurred, or maybe what their motive was, or something. And that, in the
maybe
similar
to
way
match the victim up and. Kind of like a Return of the Obra Dinn, like one of the people who is actually, you see that this person got killed at one stage, and it's like, there could be vigilante out there, killing multiple killers, and they appear as victims in certain certain cases.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's kind of a Return of the Obra Dinn, but a little bit more.
Well, so I think obviously the other thing that these games do somewhat differently then is the means of exploring the information space, right? Yeah. Obra Dinn does that by, you've got the frozen moments that you can go through. With there's some dialogue, and then there's some, you'll see faces, you can walk around and in particular spaces.
Like, basically just case files.
Yeah.
And you got case files and suspects, and like your suspect pool for this could be rather small, but then you can add someone else in because, you know, you realize that, hey, this person was actually available at this time to do such and such. And
yeah, I think with that sort of game, the challenge would be not being too overwhelming with how much information is available to you. So I think there'd just be some experimentation with scope that would have to happen there. Like, okay, how much is too much? Like, how many cases can you be working on at one time before your mind is just overwhelmed and not really able to make those connections that need to be made? But, you know, that'd be the sort of thing to explore. And then,
yeah, it's kind of like a Roottrees where you get those 3 at the start, and that's what you're focused on. You focus on these 3 cases.
You definitely could direct it, right? That comes in the writing then and in the design of it. One thing that you and I have talked a little bit about is, and something that we're sort of doing in the next game we're working on, is kind of combining more of these deductive mechanics with more traditional point-and-click mechanics. So I could see in this situation, like, there are certain people you can call to go through dialogue with then that will give you additional information. And once you've, you know, perhaps locked in certain things, then you get additional dialogue options when you call them back or just things progress. Or
I could imagine, you know, you're looking at a case file and you go, oh, I can go down to the evidence room, and then you look through the evidence and you try to find, you know.
Yeah, see, that could be good. Like playing around with, again, similar to what Demon Masquerade did, which we haven't talked about yet on this episode, but have a number of times before. Just a bunch of different papers and things that you can rearrange. But in this case, you know, the evidence is like, you can almost do it as like a 3D, like the room sort of thing, not with the puzzles of how to unlock it and stuff, but just like, manipulating stuff in that small space, moving things to the side, rotating them around to find a serial number or something else that you can look up, or a name, or
the idea of at the start, you're like, okay, now I'm going to pull this one evidence box out of, you know, I can book this one out. And as you go through it, it's like, you've now been able to link these 2 files together. So now you can pull these
getting access to different evidence boxes is good, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good way to somewhat artificially gate or at least restrict that information space in a way that makes sense for what they've discovered so far without making it completely overwhelming. Because obviously you could just say, hey, you can book out any evidence box at any time. Or maybe you do see that, but they need a specific code and they need a serial number of a case or something that you only end up finding.
And because you can only have one case's worth of evidence out at any time.
At a time.
But if you link them together, then you can have those 2 out now because they're linked.
And now you can directly compare them, and it's like what, you know, you'll definitely at one point have a piece of paper that's been torn in half and put in between the 2 different case files. So the only way you can like put it back together is have them both out at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. But I can just, like, it's one of those things where, you know, the thing is almost writing itself. Like you can
it
see
definitely feels like that sort
you've got this case, you've got this case, well. And you're trying to then go get this.
What do you think an MVP would look like for that sort of game? Because obviously we're talking about it with this like serial killer, blah, blah, blah. Like, what's the minimum number of kind of cases you reckon to make that interesting and fun enough that it could potentially be building in a game jam, for example, or something?
5 to 7 is minimum.
Yeah, I could see that.
I'd want to be doing 20.
I mean, yeah, in a full game. But this is the thing, like
full game, I'm thinking a lot more than that.
I guess it depends how many. I feel like you'd have to maybe split it up into chapters then, or like you kind of need. I think there is going to be an art to figuring out exactly how big that exploration space should be.
If I look at like how many things you had to unlock in Roottrees are dead, that was 50 that you had to lock in.
Yeah.
You'd want that for a full version of this. And even then, Roottrees, it went into a second part of the game and did another 30 on top of that. So that's 80 then.
Yeah, I suppose. I guess it depends on how much work ends up needing to go into I feel like if you're having to link, I guess if all like in an Obra Dinn way, you're just linking kind of victim crime, perpetrator crime, and then potentially victim, not all.
And victim, yeah.
I mean, depending on what it is, they might not have,
I already know
victim
why we're doing this. And it's because the computer system has gone down and all these cases were digitized a long time ago and now, like...
Right, you have to pull them out of the archives.
Left to sort of rot, and there's like, you need to pull them out of the archives and repiece them back together, because, the database has been corrupted on these X number of cases.
Yeah.
And the fact that you could figure out things that weren't originally
there. It's
like
we were printing these 2 cases as when the computers go down. So here's 1.5 case files, and you get 1 file, and it's just got like the half the lines on there because it hadn't finished that section of it. That's cool.
I love this though. I really do. That's something I've never really experienced before, where it is kind of like a little bit of that Return of the Obra Dinn, but it's got that extra little spin on it with evidence and those sort of things that you can.
Yeah, I think, we're clearly sort of throwing a lot of things into the cauldron, as it were.
But it's not taking.
But I think it would be. I don't think it's too much in this case. I think you could have a good balance of, essentially filling out the case file book, and you could have that just as almost like a log book, like we need to get these logged because, so that when the computer system comes back up, we can get them in there or whatever. And feed them through the new AI that's going to tell us who the killer is, which is, will do a terrible job because AI in that case is shit and overused. But yeah, whatever it is, like, I think that is a good mix of looking at looking at case files and evidence in that situation, looking at the evidence boxes where you've got more bulky kind of the actual evidence that is saved from the case, and then potentially the dialogue stuff. Maybe you'd leave that out. I don't know if you were building it, but that's cool.
That's really cool.
Let's do another one. See what else we've come up with in this fun genre. Cremation.
Highway.
I mean,
matching the ashes.
Yes, the first thing I had was like matching remains and figuring out whose remains were whose. That's maybe a little bit. I mean, maybe you could have one part of the game is literally you've got a few different urns, and somehow you have to like sift through to find.
You find like, oh, this person had a ring on. Oh, they were married, so therefore,
there's like something was left on the body, or like surgical implant or something might be in there. I don't know. God. I don't know what they do. I think they probably actually like sieve out and only give you the the actual ashes. But
this is really giving flashbacks for me to the last season of Only Murders in the Building.
Oh, no spoilers. I haven't watched the most recent season yet. Because
have you not?
Because Erica and I don't get a lot of time to watch TV together, and we're watching.
But you're rewatching Ted Lasso.
Well, because we haven't watched season 3 or whatever it is, or 4, 3, 4, whatever the most recent one was. And so, but it's been too long, so we're rewatching them. We're up to season 2 already, at least. Highway is interesting.
Yeah.
Maps is a fun thing.
Yeah.
But like maybe having to recreate maps in some way.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I can sort of picture you've got some evidence that's saying, we traveled, west for 5 kilometers or whatever. And, so at the beginning, you've literally just got a line from, okay, there was at this place to this place. But as you get more information, you're able to fill that out. It's like, oh, I found a map of the highways for this little set for this section. It's like, okay, it puts those in and it connects them up properly. And that
this matches perfectly that, they travel along here and then they turn this corner here. So if they started here,
that's it. Or it might say, oh, hang on, like this place that was mentioned elsewhere is in between these two other places that previously, because I didn't have the map, all I knew is the approximate distance between them.
Yeah.
That could be a really interesting way to start revealing and deducing things in a slightly different way.
And it'd be interesting to see how else you could pull it in. I'm almost also thinking about a hitchhiker as well. Like that could be kind of fun to see, maybe you're tracing the trail of this hitchhiker traveling across the country and you gradually putting together, oh, he talked with such and such and then, this happened.
I think you're maybe tracing multiple people's paths across the country or across an area.
Yeah.
And at certain points they come in contact with each other. And so you are getting this information of like, oh, well, if they talk to each other there, and, person A was down here 2 days ago, but person B, then you get this sense of the convergences.
And you're almost getting that story then, because I think it's these multiple people who are actually recording their journey. And so you're getting, oh, this conversation that's happening between these two people, this rings a bell. Like the way they're talking is very similar to the sentence structure of Hitchhiker 1. So therefore, this is on his journey somewhere. Like,
yeah. And like, this is a connection between these two people. Okay. They traveled together for a while.
Yeah.
I like that a lot, actually. And then, the cremation could just be whatever. One person's taking their father's ashes across the country to put them.
Exactly.
Whatever. That's just part of the story. Because I like this map aspect.
And once you actually get that sort of story aspect of like, oh, you've got multiple hitchhikers and therefore you're working out who took what journey, where they ended up,
they may not even all be hitchhikers. It may be like, okay, well, this person's on a family holiday, right?
Yeah.
This family's on a holiday. But it could even be like, oh, but they had a big argument and, the husband took a cab home while the wife continued with their two kids. It was like, you have to figure out, oh, where did that split happen? Because I've got some evidence from this time from over here and they're not together, but back here they were and there was no sign of anything going wrong, like filling in those gaps. It gives me so another game that we've both played recently that we haven't talked about was Strange Horticulture, which is again a little bit of definitely of this deductive sort of thing. I think slightly different mechanics, a slightly different way of how it worked. But one of the mechanics in that was very much around, oh, you've got a map and you get some instructions or you get some cryptic clues or you get some tools you can use
of where you go
point at a particular point on a map. So you could definitely bring in some of those sort of things too. It could just be like, oh, I got some evidence which gives me vague directions from this point to where they went. Okay.
So now I click on this point on the map and you find out some more information from the shopkeeper that happened to be there. Like they saw, this person get picked up by this.
Mm-hmm.
What could be cool is this is again, and you don't find this out till the very end or whatever, is like, there's actually been, a bunch of people that got killed by someone.
Right.
And you're actually tracing, because you don't know who this person was that killed them, but you know that they were all killed by the same person. You have to try and figure out who they all intersected with.
Like, and that could even be something at the end. Yeah. Like, almost your final lock-in thing is like, okay, who was the murderer? And there are a few different options, but only one that fits 100% based on where they were at different times. I like that, actually. Yeah, that's cool. And I think a lot of this one would be sort of similar to Roottrees Are Dead in a way where you're maybe typing in search terms or like using a computer to look up, oh, can I get the surveillance footage from, the gas station in this town on this date because I knew that such and such came through on that time, and then that might give you a bit more information.
And from there you get a license plate and it's like, okay, great. I can now get the audio, because in this world,
whatever you can get the audio for stuff
you can get the audio for the stuff that happened inside this car. So you now have that journey of here's the look of the shape that it actually took.
Yeah.
So you can, but all you have is lines that you have to then match up against the map.
Yeah.
And you have a conversation.
Yeah.
So you have a little bit of story, you have a little bit of map, but then you got to go, okay, so they started here, and then you got to maybe rotate the map to get it to line up.
Yeah, to get it to line up properly.
Okay, this is where they're going to go for the next camera. So you go there, and it's like,
I like the idea of potentially being able to map the approximate timestamp of the conversation to how far along that line they would have been as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, they were traveling for,
12 minutes.
For 12 minutes in this general direction between these two spots, and it kind of looked like this. Oh, and at the 6-minute mark, they mention like, oh, hey, a farm, maybe we should stop. No, I don't want to stop. And then that's an aspect of, okay, so approximately halfway between, it's got to be somewhere there's a farm. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's
already, this is like, just like the last one, it feels like this is actually really writing itself.
I mean, it's cool that, we, as we said at the beginning, maybe there's no new ideas under the sun. I think actually we've, while these are not completely novel ideas in games, basing a deduction style game around particular sorts of things, maps, case, crimes and evidence, feels new. It feels cool. It feels like something that could really fit together well and work.
And I mean, depending on how many people, you don't know who you're following, you just know that like, there were X number of victims, whatever it was, but you're only getting like one little part, and that opens up to, this person then had a conversation with this person. Okay. Who you then following and,
Yeah, I think you'd have to differentiate pretty well to the player, like, this is a new person you can follow now. Like, there's going to be more information about this person as opposed to them just being.
And I think it's one of those things of, this person has left the area and they never came back. So therefore,
Yeah, maybe
the trail has run
have
cold
the
on
computer
this.
say like no further information about this person or whatever. For sure. I love that. I think the idea of laying maps over each other and like almost having a couple of transparencies or whatever that you can flip up and down or shift around or whatever, rotate a bit to find. Particularly, like that's ripe for those aha moments as well. Particularly if you are adding different things like landmarks and stuff in. It's there.
Like, okay, now I know that there's a shop here, so you click on that point, and you then have like a little scene where it's like, okay, the shopkeeper has been involved, but then later on you can bring that shopkeeper back as like they picked up someone else, so it's like they're now part of the like
have some
story in multiple ways,
some misdirects in there and. One thing I was thinking, and this might be going a little bit too far for this game, but for this type of game would be really cool. So I know that, there are people on TikTok. There's one guy I follow in particular on TikTok who finds people based on like just a video where they just like do a rotational video of their surroundings and he'll find them. And a lot of the time, it's basically like
GeoGuessr, but at that,
it's kind of like GeoGuessr, but he'll use, it's not the like instant I know this. It's more, okay, I saw that this store was here and it's next to a lake. So let's use like a GIS data, like a global information system database to find all of the areas that have, a McDonald's next to like within 5 kilometers, within a kilometer of a lake, and then click on them all and see if they match up. Like having that sort of thing where you can kind of narrow down this data set based on some evidence you've got of just potentially like proximity or different things could be cool. That you'd have to have a huge.
I can almost see that. This hitchhiker took a photo at this place as he was connected to public Wi-Fi.
Right.
Here.
Yeah.
And therefore we now have access to this is the photo that he did at this place. We've got access to it because we know that he was here. Like, and as you click on that spot where he dropped off, like that's when the next upload happens, sort of thing. And
Wi-Fi points is a really fun one because you could have some information of they connected to a Wi-Fi point with this name, but you might not have the location of where they were. No. You might just because you've got their phone or something, you've pulled out the connection history from their phone, but there's no GPS.
You click on that point and then, here are the 17 Wi-Fi points around this thing, and then you see one that was like they connected there, and you can click on that.
People give their Wi-Fi funny names, right? Like if it's like, so it could just be something like, Sheraton Hotel guest Wi-Fi. It's like, all right, so they were at a Sheraton. Okay, that's one thing
out
to
of
narrow
13
down.
in this,
or it could be like
city or
pretty fly for a Wi-Fi, and so you have to track it down to the person who's into fucking Offspring, and they were, drove past their house, or whatever. You find there's more evidence then that can go into actually making that link, which is really fun.
Yeah, this is again really cool. I think we test fate and we try going for one more.
All right.
I'm just going to hit the button a few times. So, okay, that's a word I've never heard before. What'd you say? Balance?
No, pounce.
Pounce.
As in like a cat to pounce on something.
Trolley.
What was it? Trolley?
Trolley.
Okay.
Or is it trolley?
This definitely doesn't jump out as quickly, but
don't forget, the last one started off as we were talking about cremation and like
something around supermarkets could be interesting. Something around either receipts, products that they've bought, like mapping garbage to things that people have bought or something, like going along those lines of buying habits and purchases. Could definitely be an area of data that sort of could be fun to go. I mean,
the idea of a new garbage thing has come through. It's like, okay, so now you get to work out from the garbage and you find a receipt for this, and it's like, okay, so they've had this happen recently, but it was a meal for one. Okay, so this person is. Yeah,
almost
2 weeks ago, we
purchases to a timeline to then build out a story.
Yeah.
And figure out what's happened. I mean, even outside of the deductive sort of thing, you could almost, in the same way that unpacking tells a story, you could almost have this be. Obviously, you would have some deduction in there, but maybe not as heavily as these other games we've talked about. Maybe it's more, hey, it's kind of zen to sort through garbage, find dates, put them on a time, write up. Maybe this is almost a hobby, but it ends up telling a story, sort of thing. Yep. Maybe maybe you're separating out their recycling, like it's figuring out which bin. This stuff it's sorting through people's garbage, but as you find interesting things like receipts or particular things, you can put them to the side and start mapping out.
Okay. It's an apartment building. So you've got lots of different garbage.
Yep.
And you're trying to narrow down to, who in this, what the story is over these 4 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
For these, I don't know how many residents, like.
It couldn't be too many, but maybe like
7 or 8 residents, 7 or 8 apartments.
Yeah. Or, I mean, it could even be it could be up to 12. You've got like level 1, 2, 3 with 4 apartments on each or something.
Yeah.
Because then you could have like, sometimes you get garbage and it is mapped to it's like, okay, this is definitely garbage from this apartment.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's like communal garbage. But you might find a receipt that's got an apartment number on it because the DoorDash guy took it up. And it's like, okay, okay. Usually, like you said, usually they're by themselves, but this is a meal for 2. So they had someone over, like, is it someone else in the apartment
on
building?
the same day, such and such from this apartment who's got a husband
bought new perfume or something, or
wasn't eating, but that's also her favorite food that they were having down in this apartment. And you can just maybe have some way of piecing that together. And
well, I feel like it's almost a bit like that one level in Golden Idol, Rise of the Golden Idol, that had all the apartments.
I was thinking that exactly. There's something about that level in Rise that was really, really cool.
But, I can imagine this idea of you're just the, either the the janitor or whatever it is, your job is to sort. I actually like the idea of you're sorting this garbage. You're having to put recyclables in the recycling and whatever. Like, that's kind of a little bit of a Zen thing there. But it's like, you come across something that's actually got a little bit of information, and you can put that up on a pinboard and map it to. You
come across something that's got a bit of value, and you put it aside. Like, this is your trophy.
I can picture this as like a 3D game. Maybe a bit like Roottrees, where you can just go sort of station to station, or you could have it free movement. But you've got some shelves over here, and as you find valuable things, it's like, I put my little collectibles over there. Over here, you do have a pinboard that's got all the apartments on there, and you can like pin up receipts or different things. And then you probably need another area for potentially just laying stuff out.
I like the idea of this character says at the start, I've already got rid of all the actual garbage, and this is just the stuff that.
Yeah, you probably don't need to go too far into just like piles of food waste or whatever. Although in certain cases that will tell you things.
Per day or whatever, you got 7 or 8 bags.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, it's over X amount of time, but it's like, not everyone will throw out a bag of garbage every day.
No, for sure.
But the idea of each bag is from a specific apartment, and you can start working out whose apartment.
Well, and that's a really interesting way, because I was thinking like this, the way we're talking about this makes sense, that things would be revealed chronologically almost as they happen, like something happened that day. But yes, if someone maybe someone doesn't make much garbage, so you don't get the garbage from, 2C until
day
days
4.
in. Yeah. And you get the last 4 days of garbage, and that fills in gaps of other things that you've seen happen. Yeah, that's actually a good way to to do that.
And the fact that you can go back to the bags, because he's, sort of catalogued, these are the things from each bag, so that.
Right. Yeah. I think
you
don't let them throw away anything that
is.
You at least catalog it, yes. So you go back and say, this person, one of the bag 2 on day 3 had a banana peel and this receipt which I've stuck over on the pinboard and whatever else, cat food bag or something. I mean, obviously you'd have to let the player be able to, anything they need to examine more closely, go back and look at it anytime they want.
Yeah.
That's great.
Three really cool ideas.
Yeah. To the point that I want to get on a game jam and make one of these or something, those are all really doable, particularly the last 2. I think the first one would be
one was
bigger scope. But the map one and the garbage one, those are great.
Yeah.
Cool.
So hope you like this little bit more in-depth discussion at the start.
Yeah, this is what we get into when we get interested in something. So we actually do a bit of actual game design, not much of the comedy. But hope you enjoyed.
Yeah.
And if you want to find our previous episodes online, go to podchaser.com/bitstorm. Most of them are a bit looser and all over the place than this one, but there's a lot of fun stuff in there.
Look at last week's episode to see how loose they can get.
Indeed.
Okay, and if you like the song that we play at the start and end of each episode, that song is called Mount Defiance, off of the album Containment Failure by the band Kurodust.
Yeah.
Go check it out at kurodust.bandcamp.com.
That's right. So thank you again for joining us this week on Bitstorm. I'm Ben Slinger.
I'm Trevor Scott. Go play Type Help.
Deduct. And yes, go play Type Help.
Type Help.
Type Help.